Go.
We are back to another episode of the Bricked Up Blitz podcast. Today is going to be a, I think, pretty much no guest day. It's going to be me, Lemnos, and your favorite co host, Tyrant, Wayne. Welcome,
Hello.
Wayne.
Hi, hi. How are you doing, Len?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I am also doing great. It's Friday. It's gray skies in the West Coast, in Vancouver. How's the weather over there in Connecticut?
We also have gray skies. It rained a lot, which is a good thing because we actually had a drought. We had some wildfires, which Connecticut like never gets. I talked to Wick, and a bit more north of me, it's raining over there. Actually, to the west, and you guys probably saw this. It was snowing at the Brown Steelers game, and that snow came over to us, and the western part of the state actually got snow. So winter is coming, everyone.
Nice.
Yeah,
are you a winter type of guy? What do
I
you
like
like to do?
winter. I like snow. I just hate that I need to clean up the properties with it now. So I like snow. I like the ambiance of snow, but I don't like the responsibility of snow now.
Right. Yeah. I'm fortunate. I don't have that problem anymore. Um, Being in a very mild city in like Vancouver, all I do is get rain. Um, so
It
yeah,
doesn't snow there.
it's kind of funny you ask that, Lem. It snows maybe up to 5 times in the winter season, and whenever it does, they shut down the city because they don't expect snow, and when they do, they just shut down the city for some reason.
Oh my god, that's so silly. I mean, these days, like in Connecticut, we get like 1 to 2 days of snow. At least the past couple of years. We'll see if that changes. But like, we used to get snow like every week, but now we hardly get any.
Yeah, global warming.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, so we are almost at the end of November. We are almost done the season. We haven't done a podcast in quite a bit of time now, Lem. So we got a lot to talk about, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So shall we just jump right in?
Let's jump right in.
All right. So the first topic I have for us today, Lem, is the has-beens. They missed out on the playoffs. They were the sixth seed. However, they were 3-4, with in which in a season where all the teams were quite competitive and quite close to one another. I think the top three teams were 4-3, and then the bottom half of the league was 3-4. So, how would you sum up the has-been seasons, and um, did we expect to see them miss the playoffs?
I don't know because I think they didn't look great in the beginning of the season. But Dangerous also looked really bad in the beginning of the season. Obviously, Dangerous turned that around, but we'll get to that later. The has-beens started turning things around, especially when they ended up getting PFP into their lineup. Um, they always had the talent. I think, and we've probably talked about this on this podcast. We probably talked this like just generally in our streams or our general chats and stuff like that. But the has-beens like always had good people on their team. They just never had a consistent lineup. I think while they did like the fun thing, like they did what everyone should probably do is like just get everyone a bunch of different playtime and different facets. But like if they actually had a lineup that was consistent and they grew with that lineup, I think they would have definitely been in the playoffs and got some chemistry together. They probably could have made it, and I don't know who would have not made it, but they definitely would have been contenders.
Yeah, I think having a slow start definitely probably impacted the vibes, like how much people want to come on and stuff like that. I do personally feel like Finn started to take it more seriously and as a challenge when the losing started to pile up. However, I don't know how the M was for the rest of the team. Like, were they getting like about to get checked out? Were they still motivated to play each and every week? I do respect the type of captain Kite was this season, in which he wanted to give everybody play time. They had preset, lineups essentially, from what I've heard, um, accommodating with Romo's weekend availability, and then eventually trading for Portis to make a late playoff push. But at the end of the day, in terms of like the actual blitz performance, I think where they lacked the most, and I don't think they really solved it at all this season, was their defense. Like it just, I think if they were
Yeah,
able to like, muster up a consistent and a defense that can like produce turnovers, I think they would have been much closer and probably edged out some wins because there were some games where like they like for example that first game of the season they played the underdogs and they produced like almost five turnovers, but which is impressive, right? But like they just like how do you not win a game when you get five turnovers? You know what I mean?
yeah. No, that's true. They did a lot of good stuff. They were able to score. They were tight in a lot of games. But at the end of the day, they couldn't end up stopping most of the other teams. Um, and so maybe they just needed they needed that kind of like that Portis presence or whatever Portis can do on defense. I think to keep them consistent there.
Yeah, and this is not to throw anyone under the bus, but it was kind of interesting. Like, and from outside looking in, maybe they should have disguised Smith a little bit more in the defensive side of things. I do feel like he was kind of the weak spot in that back line, and so it was kind of interesting actually. Like, because Smith played a lot this season, and it took that last game where he what didn't play, where they like did demolish the Krusty Krabs. You know what I mean? Like, so it would have been
Yeah.
interesting if they made the move earlier and played a lineup or disguise Smith's defensive struggles a little bit more, or just have him QB consistently all season.
Yeah, I think either way, like whatever they decided, I think they just needed to be consistent with it. I've seen Smith play awesomely on defense. You know, maybe if they just had a consistent lineup, um, they would have been able to get that chemistry a little bit better. I know something we might have talked about this at some point, but he was still trying to hone his like holding one strategy down at the same time during the season, so that might have also played into some of the woes in the beginning part of the season. I do think his defense tightened up towards the end, but either way, I think that if they had more consistent game plan, or maybe like you said, disguise some looks here and there, they probably could have done a good amount better.
Agreed. One interesting scenario that was brought up to me at the end of the season here was that if the has-beens had won against you guys, the heavy hitters, in whatever week it was, I think it was week 6, they could have been the first seed based on how every other game played out, which is kind of crazy when you think about how they missed the playoffs. They're sixth seed of the league. Yet if they had just that one win, which was that overtime game you guys had, it could have turned the whole season around and would have overtaken your spot as the first seed.
Yeah, it's just absolute wild the parity that we had in this season. I don't think we expected to have this kind of parity where it's 3, 4, and 3 teams and 3, 3, and 4 teams. I think we kind of thought it was going to be like, you know, two teams that were in the top bunch, two teams that were in the mid bunch, and then two teams that were in the bottom bunch. But it really just proved out to be like almost completely even. And kind of like what Prism was saying in chat here and there. Like this season would have actually been perfect to do that playoff style that we had from season 2. But I think at the same time, it's more valuable to have, a different playoff style that we agreed to at the beginning of the season. And now we've tried out 3 different playoff styles, and now we can kind of tailor what we want in the future based on what we've seen now. But yeah, anyway, absolutely crazy that the has-beens were one game out from the possible number 1 seed. Um, and with I think it just with the style of head-to-head groupings that we had, um, it's just some weird stuff can happen when all the teams are like the same record. What other interesting scenarios could have happened, do you think, for like seeding?
Mm, no, I mean, I think as crazy as it is, this was pretty much probably the craziest scenario I can think of. And I only say that because, like, Lem, you guys started with 0-2, right? And
Yep.
you guys ended the season. in the first seed. The underdogs started out 3-0, and only for them to lose the remaining games of the season. Squid consistently at the top, I would say, and then lost a little bit of momentum heading into the playoffs. Crabs, I guess, were kind of consistent, being in the middle of the pack. Has-beens were, fighting for last place for most of the season, but like, you know, based on everything that transpired, like, I think that the craziest scenario played out. Like
Yeah.
it was Squid Inc.'s team to capture first place. They didn't capture it. Then it was next up was Krusty Krabs, where many expected to secure the first seed, and we also didn't accomplish that. And then it went up to you guys, right? So like I think the craziest scenario ended up happening.
I think there was one scenario that Prism posted. Let's see if I can find it in media. Um, and I think it would have required. Oh my God, I gotta scroll past so much stuff. Yeah, I think I can't. I won't be able to find it. But I think it would have required heavy hitters losing, and then there would have been a bunch of teams. There would have been four teams that were 3-4 or something like that.
Mm,
And that would have been, I think, the only other crazier scenario. Um, but I think it ended up kind of interesting and silly in a way because the heavy hitters have a negative point differential and they're in number one spot. So I don't know what that means going forward, but we'll have to see how these playoffs play out with the heavy hitters versus dangerous on I think Sunday.
yeah. Before we move on to the next team outlook, just wanted to ask. Wow, I don't know why I had the question in my mind and now I'm starting to blank
It's
out.
gone. It's
Oh
gone. What
no,
happened to it, Wayne?
no, 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 no! It's gotta come back, right? Sorry, give me like 5 seconds. Surely I
All
could
right.
remember this.
One Mississippi, two
Oh
Mississippi,
my goodness, the
three
pressure. I'm
Mississippi,
not built for this.
four Where's your M?
Oh
Four
no.
Mississippi. Are you gonna win the M award for this season?
No, no, Jeff deserves it, in my opinion.
Oh, he
Um,
does. He does.
okay, fuck it.
Uh,
All right,
it's
damn
all
it.
right. We'll get to it later, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, sorry, Lem. All right, so the next one I had was unless you have wanted to jump into any, I have the semifinals game first, only because we'll be talking about the Dangerous and the Underdogs very shortly. The semifinals between the Krusty Krabs and Squid Ink. So I briefly just mentioned that Squid Ink was consistently the top seed. They were the offensive team juggernaut for most of the season. They put up 59 points with Ocho taking over Squid one week, and every other week before that, Squid pretty much had like really good games, and then a few like one or two bad games. But for the most part, they look like the team to beat. So we talked about how they lost a little bit of momentum heading into the playoffs. Do you feel like that contributed to their playoff struggle against the Krusty Krabs? Because were they just, do you feel like they were lacking some type of confidence, chemistry, didn't practice enough? Like, what do you, like, as you, since you probably streamed the game, I'm like, what did you think of that game in the moment?
I think I think Blitz, like any other team sport, like actual sport games, like football or soccer or basketball or whatever, I think momentum is like a huge thing, and it definitely affects anyone's M and how they're feeling during the game. So I think momentum, and it carries through games as well. So I think momentum is a huge part of it. Having that like winning mentality, like knowing that you can do something. Like I'm sure it's a lot of us experience this. Like when you're in the zone, you feel like you're in the zone and you could just like accomplish anything. But when you start losing a little bit, it definitely sways that momentum in the other direction. And on top of that, there was a couple like non-blitz related things that were going on with Squid Ink. Squid had Squid had traveled. He was a bit rusty when he was coming back for I forget if it was week 6 game or something like that. Um, so he was a bit rusty there, and then you get a loss, and then that momentum goes the other way. Um, and then I'm not sure if they were practicing that much. Like, so Squid is rusty. They weren't practicing that much. I think Ocho wasn't practicing a lot. Um, I don't know. I forgot what Doctor's activity was like. But either way, so they weren't practicing that much. Squid was rusty. They lost, so they started losing momentum. And then they ended up losing in week 7, I think.
Hmm.
So then you lose more momentum. I'm not sure how much Squid was playing because I think he might have been traveling on and off for work too. So he's approaching. Him and his team is approaching the playoffs in kind of like the worst scenario for them. They're losing. They're shaken. So I think it just like all the cards were against them when they were going into that last game.
Yeah. Maybe, like you said, they just need a couple more reps or scrims. I want to say that I think I saw them play the night before, but obviously pubs and league was probably different. I'm not sure what type of game plan, if they had one going into the game, and what they were expecting on the up from the opposition. But I think I still think they played a okay game. I think it was just more so they got punched in the mouth early based on the defensive look that the Krusty Krabs gave them, and it took them, surprisingly, in my opinion, a little bit more longer before they were able to adjust. And also, they were also hit with some unfortunate scenarios, such as the fumbles and the Wraith bounce and all that stuff.
Yeah, they had some things that are like on top of the on top of the macro scale momentum going from game to game. There was that micro scale momentum shifts during the game, like you just said, the Wraith bounce and the fumble. It's just so hard to come back from turnovers in these games that hardly anyone's able to turn the score around like that. Um, but I think one other thing that we probably haven't commented on too much is I think a lot of the QBs or teams in general were able to change around their offense at different points in the season, and I think Squid kept his same playbook and play style like the entirety of the season. I think teams did end up adjusting, and like your defense was also a form of adjustment. I think the heavy hitters had a decent game plan against them too, and that's because we know Squid and how his plays end up forming up. So I think it's a multi variable scenario, and we were able to like collectively as a league be able to kind of figure it out while he's also losing momentum.
Yeah, I think we should. That's an interesting thing that you brought up. Since you were the team that stopped them in week 7 with your heavy hitters defense, we were able to also capitalize with our hacks defense in the semifinals against them. Let's just spend a couple minutes here, just kind of expect like talk about like what we were doing, like going into that game. Like, if you want to start, or I could start. Like what did we both know going into that game? Ultimately, what made our defense successful against the Squidings offense?
So for me, I'll watch. I watch some film. I think I know like some like tendencies. Like I don't know people's specific plays. Like I know Squid has a squid dip, but like I don't know if Squid's calling like post up or sorry 90 up, post down, post up. Like I don't know what his specific play calls are, but I just know he likes going to the sideline, and he likes them to be like opposite roll 90s or just kind of like like post 90 type of plays that are kind of longer to develop that go to the sideline. Like I just know he would go to the sideline, so I'm going to protect against that while trying not to get beat deep. That's all we were trying to do. And if we're trying to protect our sidelines, then Wick has the freedom. Like for me, like if I'm covering my sideline, Wick has the freedom to cover his sideline, and that was basically the our premise. We didn't like do anything any crazier than that. I don't know what you guys were thinking.
Yeah, I think that we also noticed that Squid likes to go sidelines as well, so we knew that the middle would be not of much of a threat to us. However, obviously, we showed our hand early. We started with Hex D formation, and the whole idea of it was because we found through film review and just generally throughout the season that Squid runs a lot of intermediate to deep plays, right? A lot of double, like most touchdowns comes from like a variation of a post play. Um, Usually it's a double route in the middle of that kind of like throws defenses off. So we wanted to simplify what we're going to do in the back end, which is just, have Presty play deep. And then on the front side of things, I have experience in some pub games where blitzing Squid in the first few seconds is kind of tough to get like a early sack. So instead of wasting our time trying to blitz him off the snap, we contain it so we can just guard the sidelines and slants, intermediate, not like 90s if we can, and then force him to run against us. And the whole idea of it was just so that we make his offense adjust to our defense, which it looked like it did, ended up being successful and making them take a little bit time to figure out. I do think that Squid ultimately still made the right reads and tried to um, gain those optimal yards from sneaking. It just, he was unlucky with the fumble percentages, and we were lucky to time our tackles correctly as well. But yeah, the whole game plan was just that, we start with Hack's defense, alter his playbook a bit, and then the moment if we saw him kind of like start beating our Hack's D, then Turk and I was going to basically blitz him. One of us would blitz him, but we still give him the Hack's defense look. So um, it was just based on game sense, like who was going to blitz. It was either going to be Turk or myself because we knew after 3 seconds one of us needs to get on him, and that
Yeah,
was that was the game plan.
that makes sense because like Squid and I'm sure some other QBs play styles, they kind of start like 7 to 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage when they're scrambling, so you really can't ever get to them until like 3 to 5 seconds after the snap. So that was an interesting strategy to go after him and force him to you know elongate the play, which might not work with his scrambling style.
Yeah, and I do still believe that Squid is a pretty good scrambler in terms of like giving himself space. But I think it was just he was. I think he's the type of person that thinks about things at a theoretical level. And so when we threw a curveball into his decision making, it seems to like have an impact early in the game. And maybe it also ended up changing, like something that I thought about after the game as well is maybe that also affected Ocho and Dux's route running, like maybe they are now both trying to go deep on even when we were to switch back on other like defenses, and then that would give us advantage because now um, uh, basically they aren't really running anything short against us, right? Because they're running the routes differently because they assume that we're always in Axe D. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Like it flusters Squid, it flusters their entire offense. It brings down the collective M of the team. And so I think your defensive strategy like did what it was set out to do. Um, so props on that game plan. But let's take the flip side of this. There were many of those in the community that said that defense was a style of cancer or AIDS or cheese. Um, what do you say about these allegations?
I think that that's quite funny. I think it's funny because you know we could all have our own opinions about the game, how it's to be played, etc. But the ones that are being loud about it is, they're saying that, one is represents a team that is running the ball all season. A QB that's running the ball, I don't have the exact numbers, but let's just, safely assume 70% or more on plays, right? So what is more cheesy, running the ball all the time or playing past defense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's an interesting perspective. I mean, this might just be the defensive version of cutbacks. Some are saying.
And and most people would agree also that sneaking against Haxty is quite simple to gain like 5 6 yards. So if you just do that every play, then there's a free first down, right? So if there's no shame in running, we have seen most of the season, most QBs are running the ball this season. Then when being forced to sneak, even though you're not also not forced to sneak in hacks anyways, there's other ways to beat hacks defense anyways. So it's like, it's kind of like painting a narrative or forcing one's idea of how to beat hacks D and calling it cheesy is kind of I don't know if I'm using the right word here, but short-sighted or emotional about the game unnecessarily because um, yeah, like you tell me, Lam, like what did you think of it?
I thought it was interesting. I think it's one of those things like, hey, if you're gonna run a Hax D, then yeah, we'll probably increase sneaking. Like that's what you do that in that scenario because that's the strategy to beat it. I think most most blitz. Uh, I appreciate the fact that there are different blitz uh, playbooks, whether they're sneak heavy or not sneak heavy, or heavy on defenses, or just straight up cover two the entire time. It's all part of the game, and I appreciate the different play styles because it can get kind of stale to just play cover two the entire time and play whatever current meta playbook on offense. Um, I think it's fun to change stuff up. Like if you're playing against Young, you're going to get a lot of icons and runs. If you play against Squid, you're going to get those sideline intermediate to deep throws. If you play against Dan's defense or Young's defense, you're going to get like random defensive calls played at you. I think all those things are in general fun to play against. Even though some people might think that like in friendly matches that those are kind of lame, or that a general strategy entirely is like a cancerous type of play style.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to like something a little bit more upfront in the on the lines. It's like, I'm sure you remember hearing a lot of flack before where people are saying like, "Let him stop diving," blah blah blah, and then they get really frustrated at you for diving. It's like if I'm diving, then take what's open to you, right? That's almost the same thing of the Hacks defense. I would say like, if we're frowning upon a Hacks defense, which is also not the easiest defense to run in my opinion, and you go ahead and let's go back to the example of diving. You know, people are upset at that. And if you're spy, people are upset about that. So it's like, I feel like it's just certain people are just finding reasons to be upset for a style of game that is left for interpretation, right? One can also argue, this is just going back to Jeff, and Jeff is just the best example for this. So it's not really a shot at that team or anything like that, but it's like, the race starts somewhere, and then you move it back to the PSI or the line of scrimmage. It's like, are we not going to call that a cutback? um, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
if you're moving it back, then the person has to adjust to it and go back to it. Then yeah, and then at the same time, if you do a slant and then it's not open, so you end up hitching it, and then you come back to it and the wraith isn't moved, is that a cutback too?
that's what I mean. Like, there's a lot of scenarios where we give it a pass, and then some scenarios we don't give it a pass, right? So I think we play the game however one wants. Even the example of the new Hail Mary rule, where like it's okay for three people to be in the back. Like I never cared, but at the same time, I was always on the side of sending a blitzer anyways because I didn't want to sit there for
Yeah.
10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like I'm just weighing the pros and
Yeah.
cons. But yeah, anyways, I think that the only thing that we've always kind of as a community has always kind of been frowned upon was egregious cutbacks, right? Now, people have different degrees of how uh, upset they are about certain cutbacks, and that's okay. But aside from that, I think everything else is fair game to me.
Yeah, no, I'm all for a bunch of different play styles. Um, and if going back to people thinking me as a diving blitz or whatever, you could watch my film How I Blitz. I don't dive.
He's lying.
That's all I'll say about that.
He's a scuba diver.
Oh my God, whatever, Wayne.
It comes from the Greek seas.
Yes, I scuba dive in the Greek seas.
All right. So yeah, that's just uh, yeah, I think that we had a defense, and it's funny that a lot of people just saw his Hacks defense, which is exactly what we wanted people to see. But I could tell you that there was a lot of also, like, as the game progressed, we definitely called out who's gonna blitz pre-snap, but it was just to keep the things disguised as a Hacks defense for sure.
I gotcha.
Uh,
Oh, it was interesting, but I think that we brought us into a good segue. So we talked about Squid and their loss of momentum, and ended up, getting checked out of the playoffs. Um, and now we've been talking a bit about Dangerous. So should we start talking about their momentum story?
yeah, for sure. So I think to give let's to put this yeah, game into perspective, they had played each other in week 7. They had a lineup with, I think they had a different lineup. They had Tony in as running back, and CJ, I believe, was the wide receiver for that week 7 game.
Yep.
I think the score was 28-21, or it was a one touchdown game. I just don't know exact numbers.
Yeah, 28-21.
And then in the playoffs, we see Dangerous once again come out on top. I think the final score was. Do you remember?
20, 24-17.
Okay. Yeah, 24-17. And what momentum. Like the last 3 games that I can recall, Jeff has been playing lights out, like, meaning like he's been making less forced throws, less bad decisions. He's been doing what he does best, which is running the ball, keeping the chains moving. I think lately in that specific playing game, he definitely controlled the time of possession as well. I think the stats show that he had the ball 67% of the time versus the 33% of the time that Roma had the ball. But yes, that is a momentum that Dangerous went in. They were on the edge of potentially missing the playoffs if they had lost any games in the final two games in the regular season, and they showed up and they beat the team that the quote unquote divisional rivalry between CJ and Jeff stemming from last season, and
Yep.
Jeff gets the last laugh.
Yep. I think Jeff has officially come out on top of this rivalry, um, for better or for worse. But he's been playing, like you said, lights out. They've been like the beginning part of the season. I think he was throwing a lot of random stuff, or like badly timed icons, or just overall bad game and clock management. And I think he's finally, figured it out with probably, some growing pains and some lessons from Prism. I think Prism is a good feature for Young to keep Young on the right track. Um, I also noticed in the last couple of games he'll milk it, he'll slow it down instead of just the relentless fast pace, like faster than Finn offense. And I think that's been able to, especially when they get a lead, hold on to that lead. So they're just doing everything right. They're hitting all, they're firing on all cylinders, and they're not making mistakes.
Don't forget they also incorporated Sheep into the offense in that playing game as well. He got some important first downs, important touchdowns at the end zone there. Um,
Yeah,
I
he had
think
2 touchdowns.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns actually. And so way to go, Jeff, for utilizing his receivers a little bit better, becoming more of a multi-dimensional threat, not just the sneaking anymore. And so this is looking more and more like the old school Jeff that we all knew and loved.
Yep, and I think I'm not appreciating that. I don't really like that because now I have to defend against the sneak monster.
Oh yes, and we will get to that. Um, but yes, that is going to be a tall task for your team. But if there's any team that can do it, you guys have 3 capable blitzers, so it'll be interesting to see which one of you guys end up taking on uh, that gigantic task that which is stopping Jeff from sneaking.
All right, how
Um,
about this? How about this as an idea? What if we just 3B each play? We ignore Muton, and then one person just goes and covers Prism.
I think that I think you're forgetting that there's one Wraith that could go past all of you guys. But you guys do what you guys want to do. We talked about AIDS defense. So maybe 3B is a more refreshing defense.
I agree. It'd be very fun for sure.
But yeah, sorry, before we get to talk about your team, the heavy hitters, we should talk about the underdogs and what a roller coaster of a season they had. We all know that they started off hot, 3-0, and then they cooled down, and cooled down is such an understatement for how things ended their season. But specifically, CJ seemed to have checked out as captain and as a player and as a QB. He transitioned to wide receiver the last two games. Not sure if his confidence took a hit after, I don't know, whichever game it was, and just wanted to give their keys to Romo to lead them into the playoffs. We could also talk about like Dan kind of had some drama that caused him to leave our server once again, and then ultimately, in my opinion, didn't have the greatest blitz game against Jeff. Um, but yeah, it's just so much to unpack here. So let me take your shot, whatever you want to begin with.
Yeah, so they start off 3-0. I think some of their wins didn't look all that great because the first game of the season, like we said earlier, where the has-beens had like 5 picks or something like that. Like they created 5 turnovers.
Hmm.
So like that, that could have obviously gone their way. Their game two was the one where CJ did a good job sneaking, but the game, it was like 7 passes and the score was what, 10-7 or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then what was the third game? The third game was
I think the Squid
the
Ink game, the
the
Brown game.
Brown game. The Brown game. So that one was a convincing one, but maybe in like for Squid Ink, there's an asterisk next to that one. Um, so they had they had 2 tough wins, one semi asterisk win. Um, they were the only undefeated team, I think, at that point. And yeah, they were the undisputed number one team, but they weren't flawless. And I think maybe that 3-0 record wasn't good for their M. It set their M too high and didn't give them any realistic expectations. Um, because if you're that high, the higher you are, the harder you fall, or some sort of thing like that. Um, so once they ended up losing, I think it was pretty bad for their team morale. Um, but then that coupled with how people were treating them in the server, I think further accelerated the mental state of the team overall. So, there's a bunch of people like saying, going after CJ, going after Dan, like, oh, I thought you guys were so good. And then it was just a positive feedback loop. They just kept arguing, like, oh, we're better, we'll shut you out, whatever, we'll beat you. And then it's like, oh, no, you're not good, you're not good. So that just kept happening over and over again, and probably more aggressively than what I'm describing. So I think the underdogs, especially CJ, got sick of that. Dan was trying to be positive, and ultimately, if you just keep losing, it's just not going to go well. And then eventually, the Portis trade happened, and people riled up CJ for that too, saying he scapegoated him, even though it seemed like it was what both players wanted. And I don't know, there's just so much. Like I'm trying to go through it all in my head. So let you take over here because it's just there's so much going on.
Yeah, I think everything that you said. There's also, the elephant in the room, which is the internal team vibes were off the moment the draft happened, I would say, between Tony and Dan. But, I'm not going to get too much into it because there's their own personal stuff going on. Um, and then Portis, one thing that I would think about, and Bruno, I think Romo played great by the like, sorry, not great, but like he played well. I feel like um, she did eventually get to him just like he did in the second half of that Week 7 game. Because if you remember them, actually, Week 7 they were actually up. two possessions, and with when Sin was the replacement sub, and then second half she came in and just shut down things for Romo in terms of the sneaking, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So maybe Romo, I mean, sorry, Sheep is just Romo's counter in terms of, um, when the play breaks down, like, can't, it's hard to sneak against Sheep, right?
Yeah.
But no, the one question I had in my mind was, what if Portis had stayed on that lineup? Would things have been different for them? And probably not because, CJ was clearly checked out, from what I've heard. Um, so
Yeah,
I,
I think Romo gave him the best opportunity to win there with CJ not wanting to QB. Um, if he didn't want a QB, he probably wouldn't have performed as well as he did in the beginning part of the season. Um, so I think Romo did give them the best opportunity. They could have also had Tony QB, I guess, if he wanted to, which would have been a different look. And Tony's not a terrible QB either. But anyway, it could have been looked different with Portis out there. I just don't know what the lineup would have been.
I,
Um,
yeah, I think there's a lot of what ifs, but at the end of the day, I feel like the Dangerous probably would still have come over the W. The one other thing that, I feel like they could have tried to do, but like it's very tough against Jeff's style of offense, is, to find ways to help Dan or whoever the blitzer is, um, to contain Jeff, because like the whole game, I would say that Dan got, a sack every now and then, but at the same time, Jeff got the better of him, in my opinion, throughout the game. So it's like when things aren't working, clearly you should make adjustments, right? And I feel like there wasn't any adjustments being made. It was more so, let's continue to do what we've been doing. But to me, I don't think it worked all game. So I thought that was kind of surprising that they didn't try something new. It could have been as simple as changing the blitzer.
but I think if you're talking about the playing game,
Yes.
um, I think that the vibes might have been off in the in the locker room. I think that they weren't really being communicative because they were just trying to like get through the game. Um, so I'm not sure if they really would have been able to switch around assignments as well as we think that they could have. Um, so they could have probably done a couple of different things, but maybe they thought Dan's a good blitzer. He'll get that game changing play. It's just hard to do against Young because he's so shifty. And I think I think having maybe Dan do blitz at RB when he hadn't played in a week and a half or 2 weeks or something might not have been great because he could have been rusty. It's also really hard to blitz with the running back and tackle with the running back because you're so skinny and you have no range. But yeah, they could have done some other things, but I think all the cards were against them that week 7 game, or sorry, that playing game.
Yeah. Yeah. All in all, it was definitely a tough season to swallow, especially when you start off so high. But I think this is, again, nothing wrong with CJ, but sometimes you do need that leader to steer the ship when things aren't when things get a little bit rocky, right? And I was kind of surprised, honestly, but at the same time, you know, not surprised, if you know what I mean. Um, but yeah, I think they just needed somebody to hold that team together, and but also at the same time, like there's a lot of different personalities on that team, and it's who's to say, even if you had somebody that is a good captain, could they even um, correct the ship when things went sinking the way that they did?
Yeah, I think it was like you said from the draft. Like everyone knows Tony and Dan don't get along great for a plethora of reasons. um, but I think they were being mostly amicable towards each other, except towards the end. Um, and then the last thing I want to mention about this is, whether people think that CJ was right or wrong and how he reacted towards how other people treated him. People still treated him like really poorly. So even if people are joking or like joking with like a little bit of malice to it, just keep in mind like you could be severely affecting someone negatively, and so at some point it might stop being a joke to the other person. Uh, and everyone handles that kind of stress differently, so just something to keep in mind um, for all of you out there. So we've had multiple people leave the community for different reasons. Um, and maybe, maybe newcomers don't want to deal with that kind of drama if they see it happening to other people, even if it's not happening to them. So we want to keep this community growing. There's always going to be chirping and stuff, but let's not make it like incessant. So,
Agreed. I think, yeah, everything that you said, we could try to be better together. Obviously, I don't expect, I don't expect us to be perfect every day or anything like that, but keep things reasonable, um, and keep things civil as best as we can. And even if nights become uh, dramatic, um, the next day, let's forget about it and move on, right? Because no point in a small community like we are today. Like, let's keep things fun, engaging, competitive, but definitely not toxic the way it can be sometimes.
agreed. Like in all seriousness, like we spend like hours upon hours together every week, like playing different games, doing different things together, watching stuff. Um, So, we want to maintain that, and we don't want to have falling outs like, real life friendships. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people here that we spend more time with than in real life, and those real life people might be people you consider friends. So, just food for thought.
Yeah, and just some people sleep on Discord on voice together, So
Yeah,
um,
very sweet.
something's going on there. But anywho, yeah. Um, uh,
I just want to say this.
mhm.
Sometimes when people are sleeping on Discord, I think Roma does this too. I'll come on, I'll whisper sweet nothings in people's ears. If they're even on Discord, they might just have Discord up. But just know that me and Rome are whispering sweet nothings in your ear sometimes.
How come I never get those?
Um, I think you're usually offline by the time I'm on,
Mm, true, or favoritism, but whatever
or
then.
favoritism. Yeah,
But regardless, still I think a decent season hope. Like I know that they say that they're gone. CJ, if you're listening, Dan, if you're listening, you all guys are always welcome back. Um, at the end of the day, we just want to have fun and play in a competitive blitz as many more times as we can. And you guys are people that have a lot of experience, and we already know we're already low on numbers, so it'll be cool if you guys ever decide to make a comeback. And good luck to you, CJ, in your chess endeavors, and Dan, whatever you're up to, just stay sober, guy. All right. Uh,
no,
um,
yeah, no. Good luck, Dan, with the stuff that you're doing. I know you're trying to get some more work and stuff like that with your preferred career choice. And appreciate some time away from us toxic blitz players too.
that wellness check is very much needed. But we're almost there. The season's almost over. I think we have what, two more games left to be played. So Lem, you're the final. Your team is the final team we have not touched on yet. The heavy hitters. You guys are the first seed. Congrats. You also get the award of playing the Dangerous team this Sunday potentially. How are you guys feeling?
I think we're feeling pretty good. I mean, we're the number one seed. Um, we've been able to hold every single team to pretty low scores except for our first game when we were trying to figure ourselves out, figure out how heavy we needed to be. But we feel good. I think we have some pretty good game planning. Um, we've changed up, uh, our play style here and there to accommodate, the different teams that we're playing. So, we're gonna be ready for this upcoming game.
All right, before we talk about the game itself, I just wanted to ask, like, you know, like, who would you attribute your team success? Since obviously you guys are first, you guys started 0-2, a little bit rocky. So who was the glue that made this team stay together, fortify that M throughout the season? And are you surprised to have become first seed, or did you guys always feel like you guys were the best team in the season?
So I think we were pretty surprised to get first seed. We knew we were, or we thought we were one of the better teams in the league for this season. But I think one thing that sets us maybe apart from other teams is that we don't have any like huge like tier one game breaking players. I'd say I think we have T5 Sin, we have T2 Wick and I, and none of us are going to be like game breakers. We just got to be consistent together. Oh, okay, never mind, never mind. I thought I heard something. So, we need to be consistent together. So we all need to prop each other up and try to uh, address the like holes in our coverage, so to speak. So if I'm lacking in something, Sin and Wick got to call it out. If Sin or Wick are lacking in something, like we got to do our job to tell them, you got to do this better to do this to accomplish this. So ultimately, like I think we're uh, a true team playing team, where there's no head honcho that's calling all the shots. I will say that Wick's leadership has been extremely strong this season in a good way. He's been able to, like you said, I think steer the ship a little bit for things that my M, and also improving Sin's overall skill set. Maybe Sin isn't T5 anymore, but who knows about that. But no, he's been a great help in the locker room. um, I think he's gotten a lot better from the first couple seasons on defense. So we're looking good on defense. Um, Sin has been an extremely positive captain and a no drama captain. So I think all of that culminates into a very productive team. And I think something that we always knew was that our defense was going to be good with how we can communicate and cover the field. So that's kind of what we do. We try to kind of have like a Chicago Bears kind of team, hardly any
Oh no!
offense
Oh no!
and just good defense.
Oh no! Don't bring up the Bears.
I know,
Uh,
I know.
Are you saying Sin's getting fired after this season?
Yes.
No, but on the real note, I I think it kind of goes back to our question of the season last season, which was what is stronger, the chemistry or high competent players on your team, and I personally feel that your team uh, has a certain type of chemistry in terms of the vibes and the communication styles. You guys are all, I would say, three very laid back individuals, where you guys are able to each express your thoughts in a safe space. You guys try to learn from one another, even though you guys may disagree at times, from what I've seen. But you guys all do it at a tone that all three of you guys, I think, make the conversations or the discussions productive. And that's I think that's interesting because I would argue that your team may have the best locker room chemistry this season.
I think we do. I think we have like we're all friendly with each other. We play some other games together. Wick and Sin are up together playing like a million hours of Zomboid. Um, and I think we have a good vibes team. I appreciate that. I appreciate their patience with me in my first couple of games at QB, especially. And it's also appreciate the patience to build the chemistry with them. Um, I think our offense has looked different in pretty much every single game this season. But I think that our biggest thing is like we can communicate on what is and isn't working in a specific game and try to um, try to go into the rest of the game with how how we're going to get to win. And we've been doing that. They've been tight games, but we've done what we needed to win.
Yeah. Um, so that leads into the game on Sunday. You guys against the Dangerous team, who's riding a high momentum. But I would also argue that I think your team is also on a win streak, right? So I think you guys are also going to this game with heavy momentum. Um, I guess, if you want to share anything, you guys have a game plan against Jeff and his offense.
No, I think I like honestly, we were extremely close to beating them in week 6. The score was 16-13, and we basically lost on a interception that I gave up that I threw at the end of the half. Um, and that there's no guarantee that would have been an interception in any other game. So, it was a one score game. They were lucky I made a mistake, and that game could have gone the other way, and they could have been out of the playoffs. So we don't need to change anything. They
mm,
they are going to do what they've always done, and we'll be fine.
are you manifesting this win in your head and saying that you did everything right? Because I remember from actually several times now that you've called Jeff your counter. So it's like, are you manifesting this matchup and this win already in your head just so that just like Jeff has done the last two games?
Oh, Jeff could be my kryptonite, but that doesn't mean that he's gonna win all the time.
Fair.
So I mean, there's not any manifesting. It's just any given Sunday is any team's game.
That's fair. Um, it would be interesting to see whether you decide to blitz Jeff. I think, as most of us saw in that Week 6 game, surprisingly, he had his way as well for several downs, getting that crucial first when he needed to. So it'll be interesting to see if you're back in the blitz position to get redemption, or if we'll see Sin or Wick potentially get a crack at him. But regardless, I'm looking forward to that matchup, um, and it should be a fun one.
No, it's gonna be super fun. We can all blitz him. I mean, Young's game plan isn't hard, so I mean, he's gonna have fun with it. We're gonna have fun with him. It's gonna be a good game. Something else that we want to talk about cheesy. We talk about the AIDS D. Talk about cutbacks. What else have we talked about? We talked about the cover three. Uh, what other cheesy things are there? Moving the wraith backwards. Let's talk. We could talk about Scourge juking. That's pretty cheesy too. Um, so there's some calls for other people in the league in the beginning part of the season that to say like should Scourge juking be allowed? Any thoughts on that?
I haven't seen a Scourge juke that was super egregious to the point where, like, the person that's supposed to tackle it couldn't tackle it. I have seen one in a recent pub game where the Scourge definitely went ahead of them instead of behind them in some way. So that was, but like that was one in I don't know how many, right? So I think for me, I think I'm okay with it for now until I see something that makes you question or make question his legality of it. You know what I mean? Because I haven't seen anything yet that was like, God damn it, like, that was bad.
Maybe this is the game. We've had pretty much drama and like some sort of drama in like every single game, whether it's lag, whether it's scheduling, whether it's the cover three debacle. There's a few other things too, I think. Colors maybe, but anyway, like there's been drama, and there'll probably be drama again.
Oh yeah. One thing you can always expect in our league games is some form of drama, regardless. regardless of what happens. It doesn't even have to be your game. Like, what was it just the other day? I remember like doing the stats one night, and then I come back to the locker room chat and I see Curtis and Tony going at each other, and I was like, where did this come from?
I know. I think Curtis just wants show matches. Give the man his show matches.
That's right. But the one thing I wanted to say again about your game was it'll be interesting because as it always is when you play against Jeff, it's up can your defense contain and force turnovers against a run heavy style offense versus on the flip side, uh, you know the heavy hitters all season long, as you mentioned, you guys have varying degrees of offense. What you guys produce and showcase on league night can be, it could be a decent offense or it could be one of the worst offense we've ever seen, right? And so it's like the perfect setup. Like your defense has to win the game, has to win you the game, but at the same time, even if your defense does a good job, your offense needs to be perfect for you guys to also win the game.
Yep.
So yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be very exciting. We'll see also the how much again Sheep and Prism can support Jeff and empower Jeff to be the best version of Jeff he can be, as he's shown in the last three games. Um, and you guys are both riding the hot hands, right? So there's only one winner. So um, yeah, looking forward to it, and then whoever wins that matchup, you guys can see the Krusty Krabs in the finals.
Oh God, I just want to play the Krusty Krab so bad. It's gonna be so easy.
That's right. All right, so that's it for our semifinal predictions. Lem, um, shall we just finish off this episode with awards, or would you prefer to save that for the next episode?
No, we could talk about well, awards. So the round one is ending tonight. No one's gonna hear this in time. So we have 11 votes right now. We need more people to vote, but by the time people hear this, it should be time for part two of voting, where we'll actually be finalizing the awards. So there's a bunch of awards, and it's set up for most of the same awards. There's a couple different ones, a couple different fun ones. Um, there's not really much to say because I would say, oh, you can vote like this in part one, but no one's going to hear it. But we wanted to try to do a different format, so it's not any of us like edicting who the candidates are. It's that you write who you think the candidate should be for the open-ended questions. For some of them, there's only like four rookies or something like that, who got appreciable play time, so those can only be the candidates that are options. But yeah, no, we should be finishing part two of the award voting, I think by Monday, and then hopefully we'll have some sort of award ceremony before the Super Bowl. I could actually see a world where if we play the Super Bowl shortly after Sunday's game, that the award ceremony can happen after the Super Bowl, which could be cool or lame depending on your perspective. But either way, we're gonna have some sort of award ceremony, which we didn't get to do for season two because I think, well, I don't forget what happened. Money like just called out the awards before a game or something like that, which is fine.
Well, to be fair,
But
I definitely recommended that one last season.
I don't know.
But
I was in Greece.
yeah, I recommend that at 20 money. But I have a question. Should we,
Yes.
based on the your note earlier today saying something about lack of voting, should we try to extend this up until Sunday? Because like you said, like we're not, I don't think we're in a rush to get the awards. Oh, we can even do it after the Super Bowl, like as you mentioned, or before. But I think the first round is quite important for people to vote on, especially if you're saying that only about like 10 to 12 people have voted so far.
I think if we get over 15, I think that's all we need, right? Like to have
Yeah,
a good enough sample size. So I
yeah.
think if I just heckle people tonight to vote, I think we'll be fine.
Okay, okay. Then I guess you'll make that call, Lem. Only reason I agree with the 15 only because I think last season the turnout was between 16 to 18 between the two rounds, anyways. And I remember asking Dan for season one, and he gave a similar response. So If we could get those numbers at least 15, I think that's fair.
Cool, I agree.
All right. Well, award specifically, any awards that you are personally keeping an eye on who's going to win? Like, what's a close race that you're curious to know who's going to win for that award?
So I haven't really been looking at the results. I've just been making sure that people filled them out right. So I don't know what people are
Hmm.
are putting as their candidates, but I mean, just what we've talked about throughout the season, what the stats are looking like. Um, I think Duxer is definitely a shoe in for at least Defensive Player of the Year. Maybe he doesn't get MVP because he ended up not progressing in the playoffs, and people might think some sort of way about that. But he's definitely MVP caliber player for this season. So definitely Duxer for Defensive Player of the Year, possibly MVP. Um, Definitely you or Prism for MVP, possibly, because of the impact you've had on your team. You're the tyrant of the Krusty Krabs. Everyone knows you actually run that team. That's a discussion for another podcast, possibly. Um, I think for Offensive Player of the Year, um, where is this? There's definitely you. You had a lot of production from Krusty. Um, Jeff has done crazy things with his legs. Duxer also did really well. So I think those are kind of options for Defensive Player of the Year. Oh, Devin, Defensive Player of the Year. Congratulations on your son. Very happy for you and your budding family. Um, so definitely Devin for Defensive Player of the Year. Possible CJ because he had the most interceptions. There's a few good options out there.
Yeah, I like a lot of those performance awards. I think the ones that are interesting to me would be who's going to win out the Captain of the Year. I think personally, I feel like we have a few good candidates. I really like Sin's progression as a captain for the heavy hitters this season. I think a lot of people made the right moves, like Jeff for for the mentorship and they pretty much only had them three to play all season, right?
Yep.
Um, who else? Krusty for trying different things with Devin and Turkey. I like you know even though I don't imagine a world where he wins it, but Kite for making a necessary trade to try to make a late playoff push. That was interesting. Um,
I think a lot of people sleep on Kite, aka To, aka BPTO. Um, he even though they ended up the sixth seed, like as we talked about, like everyone was 3-4, 4-3, um, and some of the games that he played, he didn't look great, but like he got his players play time. I think his players had fun with that arrangement, and he also improved a lot and made an interesting trade towards the end of the season to make his team a little bit more competitive. So even though they ended up being the sixth seed, it absolutely didn't feel like it. And I think we all see Kite as a persona in public, but behind closed doors, especially in his locker room, I'm sure he's showing like the the character that he has to that that shows that he's a good captain. So in my mind, captains of the year might be a little biased, would probably be Sin and Kite.
yeah, very good choices for sure. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what the league votes on. But yes, I would say that I would probably vouch and endorse Sin to be the captain of the year for myself. Um,
Hell yeah.
all right. And then the last award that I guess I wanted to just be interested in to see would be who do most people want to have a beer with? Just
Yeah.
yeah, that would be a good
It's
one.
gonna it's gonna be like kind of the best vibes award from last season, but it's a little bit different. The best vibes is like you know they're a good person to hang around with. Like beer bro award, someone you want to get a beer with. That's gonna be someone that you need to actively do something with
Hmm.
that person. You're gonna go get that beer with that person. You're not just in their aura, so to speak, like in their vibe. So I'm also very interested to see who will come out on top there.
I don't want your feelings to be hurt, Lem, so I'll just tell you right here live on this podcast that I would have voted you, but I feel like you're just somebody that doesn't care to drink. So I took that into consideration. So I think you were not high on my list for grabbing a beer with, but only because I think your personal preference is not to have a drink.
You don't even know me, man. I will gladly go out and get a drink with friends. I
Oh
just don't
no.
drink I don't drink a lot like on my own time where I'm like home.
Oh
I'll,
no.
I'll have like one drink or two drinks a month if I'm like at home by myself. But if I'm out at dinner or something or out with friends, I'm gonna have a drink or more.
Oh no. That's not the way I wanted to end this episode. You yelling at
Oh
me.
my God, Wayne, you don't even know me.
All right, well, all right. Maybe I can start editing my submissions before the end of tonight then. All right,
Uh,
well, this is all I have for today. Did you have anything else before we could wrap this up?
no, we can wrap this up.
All right, well, fun fact, and it's been a while, but this episode it will be only about an hour and 12 minutes, so um, this is our lowest in a long time. So thank you all for listening. You're welcome for a shorter episode. We heard you, we heard the community that we almost hit movie length. So this is our thanks to you and our gift to you for this for the upcoming holidays.
Yes, and if you're celebrating Thanksgiving next week, if we don't have a podcast before then, happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone is nice and bricked up after listening to this podcast, and let's have some GGs.
Yes, sir. GG's and don't forget Sunday will be semifinals too between the Dangerous and the Heavy Hitters. All right.
Yes, sir.
Until then,
All right.
see you guys.
Good night.